You. I can feel you. You two are amazing. Thank you so much for gifting us with the blessings of your light and your music. Paul McCartney said that song was written about people who are always moaning about the weather. And, well, actually, Lennon said that. He said he wrote the song because people were always moaning about the weather, but he wrote it because he said, whatever is, it just is. And he said, and what I wrote the song for is so that we could fully embrace what is and find the joy in it. And so that's when Paul McCartney said about the best thing about rain is feeling it running down your back. And it made me think of all the times in my life, because, it's all about the hair. It's, many years of my life, it's been all about the hair. And so Rain and I have not always been good partners because of the hair. But what Paul McCartney says about it running down your back just really speaks to me, because it is that moment in time where we get to accept what is and find the joy in it, so much so that it feels good running down our back. And I'd like us to keep and hold in prayers right now all of those beautiful beings that are dealing with a lot of rain this morning and all night long in the whole Houston, Galveston, southern Texas area, coastal southern Texas area. And so let's just all, I loved that was the songs already set for today and that my talk was already set. I was like, everything's always supported. And in this way, I'd like for us to send our energetic support out to all of those beings. Because having come from Florida, one of the reasons why I moved from Florida is the last year I was there, we had 4 hurricanes 4 weeks in a row. So I know what it feels like. And so I know that they need a tremendous amount of support and compassion and energy right now. So let's just send it to them in this moment. Yeah, let's just feel it. Send them that support. So it kind of reminds me what John Lennon said about writing that song, and Paul McCartney said about the rain going down the back. The best feeling is we really get to accept a human experience when we find that joy and we surrender to what is. We accept a human experience, yet I also believe that we embrace the spiritual. And I think that we get to move into having that greater understanding of spiritual and our connection with the divine and the divine within us when we accept our human experience and not resist it. Because we know what happens when we resist things. It's going to keep showing up until we have accepted it for what it is. And what it is might surprise us. It generally does. It generally surprises me when I finally accept what it is for what it is. And then I'm like, oh, there's the God in that. There's the God in that. So that's what we're going for. We're allowing us to see ourselves and each other through the eyes of the divine when we accept that human experience. So we had some incredible, every day is incredible right now in life, but we had some pretty incredible experiences happen this week, didn't we? So how many of you watched the eclipse, no matter where you were? That's pretty much everybody in this room, almost everybody in this room. What an experience. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Leading up to that, and during the eclipse, and then all this week, who can testify with me that you definitely feel an energetic shift has occurred? Raise your hand. There's a lot of people in this room. I can testify to that. I am so grateful. You know how the universe just always supports us. Last year, I was asked to keynote a retreat in Crestone, and I couldn't. We had a conflict in dates. And so when I couldn't, they booked me for this year, and it just happened to be last weekend. And Crestone, the I Am Harmony Gardens out there is one of my favorite places in the whole wide world, so I got to spend the eclipse that whole afternoon in one of my most favorite prayer and meditation gardens on the face of this planet. So I feel so supported in that way. But during that time and then coming home, I felt like I've been walking in this Zen state walking, being, breathing, living. I just have felt so zen. So that energetic transformation and energetic transition that you raised your hand and said you felt, what has that been like for you? Shout out some words. You raised your hand, so what did you feel?
Clarity.
Peaceful, clarity. What else? Shifting. Awareness. Trusting. Awesome. Perspective. Wow. You know, all of these kind of are connected. Have you noticed? You put all those together, you've got yourself a pretty massive energetic transformation taking place, don't we? So, and you know how I love to start out with something a little funny. I pulled this and just laughed and laughed and laughed. Oh, well, you can go to the first slide. It's my favorite picture of the eclipse. I think Ross posted it last week, but isn't that gorgeous? Oh my goodness. I do not know who the photographer was that took that. Do you, Ross? NASA. Okay, well, there you go. Hot dog. Well, let's give credit where credit is due. NASA. Yeah, gorgeous picture. So let's go to the next slide because it tells us what the eclipse was really all about. Photobomb. So basically the moon wanted to get in on a little of the photobomb action, and that's what the eclipse was all about. I just thought that was absolutely hilarious. So let's go to the next couple of slides, run through those as I set us up for this lesson today. Oh, well, I forgot I put that one in there. So here we go. I just bought some eclipse glasses from a sidewalk vendor. So we all know, we heard the wordings about using the right and appropriate eclipse glasses as opposed to the non-appropriate. And that's kind of symbolic for life. How do you know, right? How do you know when you're wearing the right and appropriate glasses, so to speak, for perceiving life, and the not so appropriate glasses? Well, how do we know that? I know how I know it. I get a kind of a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach when I'm not wearing the right glasses. But what about the rest of you? How do you know?
They're connected to your heart.
Yes, they're connected to your heart. Yes, and if I'm feeling conflict or if I'm feeling uneasy, I got to think, what perspective glasses am I wearing right now? How am I choosing to look at the world? That's what today's service, today's talk and message is all about, folks. All about. Where does the power lie in the type of life that we live? Where does the power lie? Within. Ross says within. Does anybody else agree with him in this room? Yes? Okay. So the power lies within in determining the quality, the type of life that we live. And I know that we hear that a lot, but we're going to kind of look at a certain angle of that today, depending on what kind of glasses we're choosing to wear in this particular scenario. So let's go to the next slide. I just want to show you, oh, no, the Crestone pictures, honey. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. So these are just a few. This I Am Harmony Gardens that I love so much in Crestone has about 100 different mini gardens in this place. It's huge. And these are just a sampling. This one over here is my absolute favorite. I sit on that limb many, many times over the years and have had some incredible prayers and meditations. But this is just a sampling of some of the different gardens. Let's go to the next slide. Just want to give you a little touch. There's a 3-tiered tree house there, which I love. And Tony and I climbed up to the very top tier, and there's a little bench there where you can sit in prayer and meditation in the trees. And then there's just a few other examples. So it was just, I just want to share with you a little bit of my experience on Monday, and I'd love to hear yours from those that I haven't heard from already, because I've talked to a lot of you this week. Just wanted to share a little bit of what that was like to be so intentional, because that's why I love this garden so much, is every little grain is placed intentionally. And it reminds me so much of how we take responsibility for the type of life we choose to live, is how much in my life is every little grain placed intentionally. And that just feels so empowering to me. I feel empowered just saying the words. And with the eclipse that occurred and all of the people that traveled to see the full eclipse, I know Lenny did. I don't know how many of you, show of hands, traveled to see the full eclipse. And right on. It was spectacular, huh? And so in that moment, so many people, especially here in this country, was very intentional with how they were spending that time, weren't they? And then what happened to our news? What happened to what everybody was focused on? It shifted, didn't it? Oh, thank you, God. It shifted, right? Yes, yes. Thank you, God. Yeah, and I could feel it. Could you all feel it? I could feel it. So let's go back to the beautiful slide that you had up before with the eclipse picture in it. So this is what it's all about this morning with us, folks. Now is the time to move out of the time of becoming who you are to the time of being who you are. The shift. That's the clarity I got this week. I know a lot of people in this room said, yes, I felt a shift. I felt a transformation from Monday's experience. This kind of perfectly summarizes what clarity I got from it. We've been becoming for a while. So how about we step fully, not that we're not, and I'm not saying we're not, but we're always evolving, right? We're always expanding. How about we step even more fully into being that divine light? That's why the talk title is Here Comes the Sun. Who's the sun? Who is the sun? Symbolically, it's us. Thank you, Art. It's us. If you look up the symbology of the sun and almost all the different spiritual paths, the sun represents the divine. And I thought this was so beautiful. The sun in Hindu is considered the divine rejuvenator. That's how I felt Monday. I felt rejuvenated in being the light that I am recognizing that I am. How many of you feel rejuvenated in being the light of the divine that you recognize that you are? Yes, 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 yes. So here it comes, folks. Here comes the sun. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about, because that could take up like a whole year's worth of talks right there on how to go about doing that. So we're going to take just a teeny tiny little piece and we're going to dive deep into that today. So I'm going to tell you a little story that was shared by Reverend Cindy Grimes, who is the senior minister out in Ocala, Florida. She told this story about, and let's go with the picture of the New York Police Department's detective. I want to see how many of you remember seeing this picture. How many of you remember that picture? It came out just a few years ago. So in this picture, this is Larry DePrima. He is a New York City police detective that on November the 14th, 2012, he was doing his beat, walking his beat, and he was right outside of Times Square, and he had on 2 pairs of socks and boots, and he was cold, and he noticed his feet were really cold. And he turned the corner and he came across this gentleman here, whose name is Jeffrey Hillman, what appears to be a homeless gentleman sitting on the sidewalk. And Larry, the police detective, noticed that Jeffrey's feet, on the bottom of his feet, had blisters on it like the size of your palm. And they were bare, and he knew. His heart went out to him. He knew he had to be freezing cold and in pain. So he just immediately turned around and went to the closest shoe store and bought a couple of pairs of socks and some boots and brought it back to Mr. Hillman. And while he was giving him those boots and socks, this tourist from Arizona was passing by, and she took the picture. Now, she took the picture because her father and both of her grandfathers and her uncle were police officers. And especially her father was known for doing random acts of kindness all in his service to the field that he served so well. And so when she saw that happen, and she was like, oh, felt like home to her. So she took a picture. When she got home, she wrote a letter to the New York Police Department and enclosed the picture and just said, I want to thank you for having such amazing detectives that care for people in the city. And of course, the police department posted the letter and the picture on their Facebook page, and within days it went viral. So the reason why I'm sharing that with you is this, because the minister in Ocala, Cindy, said that when she noticed all the comments that started coming up after that picture was posted, she started feeling a little uneasy. Because some of the comments that were posted were something like, it brought tears to my eyes, there really are good people in the world, this restores my faith in humanity. You know, and those are wonderful things to point out. You know, she says, don't get me wrong, but the reason why it bothers me is and then in a moment, it kind of depicted it like it was a rare instance that happened. And she said, it's not rare at all. You know, people mostly, you know, there are so many police officers that do random acts of kindness and take care of people like that all the time. They just might not get the recognition for it, but it happens all the time. And then I'm here to tell you, I've worked for lots of nonprofits in my life and heard lots of stories, and there's teachers and construction workers and firemen and teenagers and kids that go out of their way all the time, every day, to show kindness to their fellow neighbors and people in this planet. And so that's why she spoke up and said, well, it was kind of bothering me because it made it look like it was an isolated experience, and it's not. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is people do kind acts all the time. In fact, some of the most kind people I have ever met in my life are right here in this room, right now, and you know who you are. And you're like that all the time. And so why are people so kind? Why do you think that happens? Why do you think he did that? He didn't have to go to the shoe store and buy that man boots and socks. Why do you think he did that? Compassion, yes. It's who he is, yes. Compassion, and it is who he is. It's who each and every one of you all are. And so I want to bring to mind this. How many of you watch the news on a regular basis? Watch the news or read the newspaper. Now, there is someone who did a study, and it was found that bad news is reported in the news 17-1 to good news. Now, there's a reason for that. Bad news sells, of course. And the whole idea of news itself means that, you know, it's news. Now, because we live in a time where it's on all the time, the news is on all the time. You can have access to it anytime you want. So you've got access to all of that 17-1 ratio bad news anytime you want. So it can seem like that stuff happens all the time, that's the norm. When really it's not. Really, it's just the opposite. That's the norm. Those news stories are not the norm. That's why they're called news to begin with. And it can have a huge impact on our brain, on our body, on our physiological sense, on our immune system. It can cause us to become very anxious or depressed. If we take all that on all the time, it can make us believe that that's the norm. And especially with the metaphysicians and the religious science teachings, we teach, and Christianity, really all of the teachings teach this, it's truth. What we believe, we experience. It is done unto us as we believe. So if we start to really believe that what we experience in the news and those what's considered bad news stories, 17-1 to the good news stories, if we start believing that that's the norm, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our perspective in life? How are we going to feel? How are we going to start feeling in a consistent basis on an everyday, from an everyday perspective? Which glasses are we going to be wearing, basically? The negative ones, and without even choosing it, I think. I think it happens subconsciously. I really do. But it starts to weigh us down. How many of you have been felt a little weighed down in the last few months? Right, a little weighed down. So here's some interesting research that's come from that. Mary Castle out of the University of Texas did some research and realized that increased media consumption and stress and what it does to people leads to a feeling of helplessness. And it leads to a feeling of a negative worldview. It also leads people to catastrophize their personal problems, which is a fancy way of saying we make a mountain out of a molehill of our personal problems. So if it is done unto us as we believe, and energy just continues to follow the direction of our focus, what do you think happens when we have an increased helplessness and negative worldview? That's just going to keep happening, right? It's just going to keep building on itself. Yet, that's not the norm. Mary Castle encourages people to be consciously aware of the fact that it's not the norm, it's the exception. It's what makes the news news. Think about it. It's not normal. This is normal. That's normal. All of the kindness that we get to experience on a day-to-day basis with all of you beautiful people, that's normal. And so today, here comes the sun. Which glasses have we chosen to put on this week because of that wonderful, amazing, energetic shift that has taken place? What glasses are you wearing? And are you willing to go on a bit of an experiment with me, especially those of you that raised your hand when I said who watches the news or reads the newspaper? I mean, there's nothing wrong with being informed. I'm not asking or telling you to stop doing that. But we're going to go on a little experiment today around that. Okay? So, Steve Pinker out of Harvard University wrote Better Angels Out of Nature. And Steve Pinker says this: the world right now is less violent and less cruel than it has ever been. Just think about that for a moment. So yes, we happen to live in a time where news is around us all the time. And what makes news news generally means it's tragedy. They have to make a mountain out of a molehill or they wouldn't have people watching it, right? Yet, right now, today, the world is less violent and less cruel than it's ever been. You know, there was a time in history, he reports, where men fought to death for sport and where slavery was the norm, where women and children were considered property. You know, I could go on and on and on. I mean, we know what the history is, right? So, we could stop watching the news, but I'm not asking you to. I mean, some of you need that daily dose of headlines and horror. Sometimes we kind of need to know what's going on. Yet, if you continue to watch the news, this is what the experiment I'm inviting you to do, all of us to do really, because it's almost impossible to stay away from it. You could watch it, we could watch it with more awareness and realize that it's not the norm, it is the exception. We could remember this picture. We could remember every single story of kindness and experience that we've had in that day or in the previous day or in that past week to remind ourselves that that's the norm. We can check ourselves and say, which glasses are we wearing? Are we wearing the approved Eclipse glasses? They're not going to hurt our eyes. Or are we wearing the street vendor gum Eclipse glasses, right? And we know what it feels like depending on which pairs we're wearing. Right? Yes. So we could watch with a lot more awareness. So how many of you in this room experienced a random act or an act of kindness in this past week? Raise your hand. I kind of figured it would be the whole room. Oh, come on, really think about it. I'm sure each and every one of you experienced kindness in the last week. Somebody tell me something that they experienced in kindness this week. Just shout it out. Kindness, that's our focus.
Yeah, I have people drop by my office and just to wish well.
Awesome.
Just to come and say, hey, just want to say you're doing.
Awesome.
And give love.
Art had people just randomly stop by his office to say hi and give him love. That's beautiful. What about anybody else? Come on. Kindness, yes. Oh, a sweet little note left by a student after school. I love that. That is so cool. That is so cool. You received support, love, and forgiveness when you messed up. Oh, that goes a long way. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. So how do you feel right now that we've heard those 3 examples of kindness? Kind of warm and fuzzy? Feel good? Yeah. So here's the caveat to that, folks, is we get the benefit of kindness even if we're not the receiver or the giver in the experience. We get the warm and fuzzy feeling just hearing the kindness stories shared. It has the same effect on our system. And let me tell you a little bit about those tangible benefits, that same effect it has on our system. Hormones are secreted in our body, such as oxytocin and serotonin. And oxytocin is the feel-good hormone. It decreases our blood pressure, it increases the health of our heart, and it decreases free radicals in our system. And serotonin decreases anxiety and depression. It's a natural antidepressant. So just hearing those 3 kindness stories of what these people in this room experienced last week, those things took place in our body. We received the benefit of kindness in that moment. Just like hearing this story, we received the benefit of kindness. So if we are inundated with news, and we know what news is, and we know why news is called news, it's up to us to remember that that's the unusual, unique, isolated experiences, and that kindness is what truly is running rampant in our lives. Truly. Can you see why it would be really important to have that distinction in our lives? Can you understand why that would be important? I do. I definitely do. Other benefits of kindness. People who are kind live longer, healthier lives. They get what's called a helper's high because it increases your immune system. You live longer and you feel better because of the serotonin and the oxytocin. And you get to experience that warm and fuzzy feeling, but guess what else kindness does? It makes you more attractive. Yes, it makes you more attractive. So just think about that. I mean, who could testify to that? I mean, all of you. I mean, I know almost all of you in this room, and you guys, you folks, are some of the kindest people I've ever experienced. And I can say, you're all looking pretty fine. It's true. It's true. You guys are looking pretty fine. Another thing is kindness is contagious. Have you ever noticed that with the news or with complaining kind of stuff and people making mountains out of molehills, we kind of take a few steps back. It's almost like, I don't feel too good about that energy, and I'm not really looking to pile on board, so to speak. Puppy pile, what the teenagers call it at summer camp. But kindness is contagious. People want a puppy pile on all over that. Definitely. Well, kindness spreads through social media like a virus, like a really good virus, the best kind of virus you can get. Yet other things spread through social media as well, like loneliness, selfishness, even suicide spreads through our social media networks. Gary Slecken is an epidemiologist out of Chicago, and he studies how violence spreads through networks, and it usually causes deadly consequences. So do you see how, with this shift that has taken place, how important it is from becoming that light to being that light, how important it is in today's world where there's truly less violence and cruelty, yet we have way more social media. Would you guys agree to that? That how important it is to be the spreader of the kindness virus. It's so important. Because what happens, folks, is generally people don't talk about it. And I know there's a lot of reasons why. We were raised to not brag about ourselves and others or to share that kind of stuff. And I'm not necessarily saying share it about yourself, but if you see kindness happening, man, share the crap out of that, okay? I mean, create that social media virus of kindness like you've never created it before. And that's the invitation. That's the experiment. Experiment with me. Share it. Tell people. That was beautiful. Because I screw up, and next time I screw up, I'm going to remember the support and the love and the compassion that you were offered, and just knowing that story, I can offer it to myself and turn that around. right? That's kind of how it works. So let's use our social media, let's use our friend network to spread the kindness, to be that change that we wish to see in the world. We know it all starts with us, but it's all about getting little tips and tidbits on how we can better go about doing that. And I'm not saying you're not doing a great job at it already. You are. Yet, we all felt that shift this week. And with that shift comes a renewed, like the Hindus said, the divine rejuvenator. And with that shift and that rejuvenation, I'm calling forth that we have this rejuvenation of kindness. Because you know, our global theme for this week, the talk title was Being Kind in a Cruel World. And you all can imagine why I didn't choose that talk title, because first of all, it is done unto us as we believe, and I am not going to say this is a cruel world, because it's not. It's not a cruel world, but I do know how important it is to recognize kindness more than the news. The news is important and serves us to be informed, but it need not be the focal point of every single day and everything that we think about and everything that we talk about. What if kindness was? Wouldn't that be awesome? I think that would be so cool. So, we know that energy flows where it goes. So the areas where we focus our attention are going to grow in our awareness, whether it's objectively true or not. Whatever we put our awareness on, that's going to be what shows up for us. Have you ever noticed that you were, say for example, in the market to buy something? Like if you were in the market to buy a particular new car, and there was a certain new car you were looking for, and all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere, right? That's how that works. Is energy flows in the direction where we put awareness. So I'm giving you another reason why it's so important that we focus our energy on kindness and what is happening more often than not in our world than the isolated, hardcore news that we are in front of all the time. So I'm pretty sure I've convinced most of you, right? I can see the heads nodding and you're doing this, and that's really cool. So how do we go about doing that? I'm going to give you just about 3 tips, because we know that kindness is the cure. So how easy is it? How easy is it to be kind? I believe it's super easy because of what Art just said. It was in him, right? He answered the question, why did he do that? Because that's who he is. And I truly believe that, more so than I could ever convince you of. I believe there is good and kindness in every single soul on this planet. And by believing it, I'm calling out to it. Do you remember a talk I gave once about butterflies? And when the caterpillar turns into the butterfly, there's something really special that happens in that cocoon. And that really special thing that happens is called the, don't fail me now, brain. It's called the imaginal cells, right? Did I get that right, honey? The imaginal cells. This really amazing magical thing happens. The biology of the caterpillar does not have these imaginal cells. It's something that's infused in that process when it's in the cocoon that turns it into the butterfly. And these imaginal cells have these directives that I believe, well, I mean, everything's the divine, but I believe it's like the divine directive. You know, the caterpillar in the cocoon gets the divine directive via the imaginal cells that causes it to turn into something completely different than what it started out as, right? So to me, that's the imaginal cell energy that happens when we see that in somebody else. Like I can go up to Lenny and I believe Lenny is a super awesome guy and that he is just kindness and compassion and love radiating from every part of his being. And by coming up to him and knowing that, guess what I'm going to see and experience in him? Me, yes, me. I'm going to experience love and compassion and kindness like nobody's business, right? And sometimes that's what people need. Sometimes there's people on this planet that have never been approached or seen that way before. So we get to have that imaginal cell connection. You follow me? You follow me on that? Okay, good. Yay. So that kindness thing, become aware. of the kindness in this day, every moment happening around you, and what you seek, you will find, just like the imaginal cell connection. And so we can choose to know and see and be detectives of kindness. Unearth that stuff everywhere. Like as you walk out your door, one of my favorite Rumi quotes in the world, be a lamp, be a light post, be a shepherd. Go seek out the good. So go seek out the kindness. When you walk out that door, make it your thing every day, all day. Oh, there's kindness. Oh, there was kindness. There was kindness. There was kindness. Yeah. And then share it. And I'm not, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your own kindness acts, which I totally get, because I don't believe anybody's kind because they want recognition. I don't believe that one bit. I believe people are kind because that's just who they are. So if you're not into sharing your own kindness, share other people's kindness. Share it. Talk about it. Let's have the talk go from what it generally has been in the last few months to kindness. And then I bet you anything, you are going to experience so much more of that in your life. So we get to notice the kindness, be the detective of kindness, then we're going to share it, right? We're going to share it all over the place. So our charge is to be aware. It's kind of like the I Am Harmony Garden, to be intentional with your life. In order to be a detective for kindness, we have to be aware that that's what we're doing, and then we have to be aware that kindness exists. So the objective is to be aware and not fall for the delusions. Don't get sucked into the news thing. Don't get sucked into believing that that's the norm and then start catastrophizing your life and making mountains out of molehills. Now, I'm not downing the fact and I'm not saying that there aren't mountains that show up at times. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it's up to us to be that light, to put those glasses on, to seek and know and find kindness as opposed to the other. Because we don't want to be we don't want to be news reporters, you know what I mean? Like when you run up to somebody, guess what happened to so-and-so, or guess what I read about so-and-so the other day. That's gossip, folks. We don't want to do that unless it's kindness. I could run up to Art and go, guess what Maureen did the other day, man? She did this and this and this for these school kids, and it was amazing. Those are the kind of news reporters I want to be. I'll change my mind. I do want to be a news reporter for kindness, but not a news reporter for gossip, for all that other stuff. So be kind. It's good for the body, mind, and spirit, and spread kindness. Share those stories all over the place. So I have a little, let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. Our Rumiism for the day. I don't want to forget Rumi. Yesterday was National Dog Day. Took him for a long walk. He was a happy boy. I love this. Your light is more magnificent than the sunrise or sunset. Rumi said that. Your light is more magnificent than the sunrise and the sunset. So now I want to go to the video. I think we have time for the video. It's just a little short, not even 2-minute video. So this is give you little tips on how you see kindness in the world. If you're ready for it. If you're not, I can move on. I don't think that's at the beginning, or is it?
It's like nothing else in the world.
Yeah,
the reciprocal energy is what we call it. It's real, it's beautiful. You can feel it, they can feel you, and then you can feel them giving it back to you in return.
Make people happy for all over the world. Be happy. Be happy. That's my kindness. Making people happy.
You can't get enough kindness in this world. You can't give enough kindness. You can't receive enough kindness.
If I didn't get anybody's response all day long, I wouldn't think bad about anybody. But whenever you do get the acknowledgement, it puts a smile on my face. Thank you.
It's
sort of the give and take of the whole human experience.
Whenever I have change or anything, you just should give. Everyone should give. If I get a draw out of it.
When you give kindness, you get kindness. You know, you give love, you get love. You understand what I say?
Oh, it makes me feel happy. It's just beautiful. I like it.
Gives me energy. The more smiles, the more energy I get. Can't have a frown. I try to keep that.
That little girl's smile was worth $1,000. You can't put money on a smile like that.
If you're sending out a good energy, it builds and it builds and it builds and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's going to get you sooner or later.
Thank you. So it's going to get you sooner or later, right? So how many times do you experience neat, cool things like that, but then there's like that shy thing that happens? You don't really want to engage with them, or you don't want to be, you don't want to seem self-conscious. I'm inviting us to put ourselves out there. Put ourselves out there. Engage with people. Smile with them. Engage with them in a kindness way. Create that contagion. Pass it on. And then invite them to pass it on. You know, I do believe kindness is the cure for pretty much everything and anything that ails us. And it really does start right here within us. So I have our affirmation for the day for us to speak out loud. It's the slide with all the words on it. There we go. Are you guys willing to speak this with me? Kindness is the fruit of the Spirit. As I look for, embody, and spread kindness, I am expressing the divinity within me and changing the world all around me. And so it is. And so you are. You are up. Thank you.